Hi, and let's welcome to the sixth session that we have today. As part of Chapter 6, previously, what we have learned in Design Fundamentals was a glimpse of what it took and the kind of skills you needed to develop to understand. It began from using basic shapes to moving to patterns to creating basic objects, now drawing the objects in isometry and orthographic projections to seeing how their scale actually impacted things. Now, after looking at all of them, what we are going to look at is something a little more developed now, which is an exercise in perspective. What we are going to look at this time is drawing with perspective. And before we move forward, let's ask ourselves, we've all learned that parallel lines don't meet in school, but they do in art. How do they do that? Let's see. Whenever you look into the distance, what do you see? Do you see things remaining the same? Or do you see objects receding and becoming smaller and smaller and smaller the further they are? Their actual size hasn't changed, they merely look smaller the further we go. Eventually, at the furthest point, which is your horizon, what you will notice is that all objects descend and become minor dots. That is the horizon, and the dot at which all of these objects appear to converge is called the vanishing point. Now, the vanishing point is something that is very unique to every human being. Why? Because you see the vanishing point where you direct your eyes. Your eye level is what makes the vanishing point happen, which means the 6 footers eye level is going to be different from a 4 footers eye level, and so their relative horizon and vanishing point will always be the same. Why? Because perspective is a function of your body and your eyesight. The further you can see, the smaller objects recede, and that is your vanishing point. And this is exactly how, in art, you will realize that all lines can converge at a vanishing point. This is called one point perspective. The closer an object is, the bigger it is. The farther away it is, the smaller it is. And this is actually illustrated very well over here in these cubes. Sometimes it doesn't just restrict to objects themselves, but even the components of an object. Let's take a good look at these cubes. In each of these cubes, you will notice that the side that is closest to you is the longest side. The sides that are further and further away from you are smaller. But when you see this, how is it different from isometric drawing that you've learned previously? The difference lies exactly in this, that in isometric drawing, every side remains equal, even the side that is farthest away from you. Equality of size is what makes isometric drawing work. However, in perspective, based on the number of vanishing points you have, sometimes it is 2 point perspective. Why? Because you can see through two corners of the eye, this side as well as this side. So things appear to vanish in 2 points. Sometimes when you're looking straight, what you see is a single vanishing point, and that is 1 point perspective. Now, whichever way things recede, you will notice that the further things are, the smaller those sides get. The smaller they get, the further they go. The further they go, the smaller they get. This does not exist in isometric. Isometric drawing is ideal for design development, whereas perspective drawing is perfect for realism when you want a realistic depiction of how things will look in nature. Understanding perspective, as I meant earlier, is very, very simple. Whatever's close to you is going to be the longest. Whatever's far from you will be the smallest. The second closest, the third closest. Based on that, even a standard cube will look slightly skewed and all of its lengths change. And whenever you draw, it's important that you don't just see objects, you see them with respect to their surroundings. So when you look at things and you keep your eye on the horizon and in the distance, you will notice that your visuals converge in a certain way, and it is possible for you to actually bring that about in your art as well. How do we do that? We do that whenever you're drawing by first creating an eye level. You first decide at what point in your paper your eyes are. and where your vanishing point is going to be. After which, you pay attention to the lines in blue, which is basically guidelines that extend radially and join into the vanishing point. These lines will help you decide how big or small your objects get as they recede into the vanishing point. For example, let's take a look at this street. Your vanishing point is very clearly here at the bottom, very close to the floor, where you can see a large number of people disappearing into the corner. You can see all of these pylons on the road disappearing. You can see street levels going down. So your vanishing point is somewhere around this portion. Now, with this understanding, how do you draw perspective? The way you draw perspective can be 1 point or 2 point, depending on where you are focusing. If you are focusing straight ahead in front of you, you will only see 1 point of perspective. But if your point of view is broad and you're not exactly focusing on any one person or any one point in the horizon, both corners of your eyes will be able to give you two different points. And with that, you will be able to draw 2 point perspective. That is, objects will recede in two different directions right in front of you. Trying to draw this in practice takes a little time, but the principle remains the same. You first draw a horizon line, then you extend guidelines out of the center, after which you start completing your artwork. Now, what changes when this happens? A sense of scale changes because even though objects are known to be at a certain scale, you know buildings are so big, you know trees are so big, that doesn't mean the scale stays the same visually. The amount of detail you include and the amount of realism you include is also based on that.